Okay, look at that. We're live, and look at all of our attendees filing in.
Excellent.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Go ahead and try opening the chat. We have the Q&A panel as well. Here we go. Heyo. We'll take a few minutes to let people file in here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. My name's Alex Kuntz, curriculum developer at Codecademy. Look at that. We got a question coming in. Awesome. Kenny, Zoe, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, Zoe, you want to go for it?
Sure. Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm a curriculum product manager at Codecademy.
Hey guys, I'm Kenny. I'm a curriculum developer here at Codecademy as well, and really excited to have you all here. I'm seeing a lot of hellos to all the panelists, but feel free to say hi to everyone too, not just us.
Yeah. And folks from all over, it looks like. I'm seeing Paris, Dubrovnik, South Africa, England, London.
Zoe, I saw people loving your background of OMG, it's full of stars.
It is full of stars. Fun fact, I'm actually currently doing a 100 days of coding project.
Oh yeah? In
P5, and it's all about space.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I've had space and stars on the mind, you could say.
Yeah.
Lately. It helps with the cabin fever, kind of like mentally put myself out in a extremely expanding universe. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Opposite of claustrophobia.
Yeah. I also feel it's funny because my my headphones kind of make me look like I have Princess Leia buns.
Ooh, there we go.
Yeah.
Cool. We have some questions in. Which lessons have you worked on? Yeah, Annalise, I've written a lot of the Python data science stuff. Kenny, Zoe, you want to talk about what you guys have done?
Yeah, I've done a lot of random stuff. I've worked on our Learn HTML, Learn CSS, worked on some data science stuff. I worked on our Learn Alexa course, which was really fun. I created the Learn How to Code course in Code Foundations path.
That one's really great.
And C#. So kind of all over the map in terms of stuff.
Zoe actually created this learn from, or what's the name of the course? The
Learn How to Code.
the Learn How to Code course. You use a bunch of P5 in making like the visualizations. So the stuff that we're going to be learning today, Zoe used to create some courses, which is kind of cool.
Yep, exactly. So you can always go in and inspect some of the things. Some of them have P5, some of them have jQuery, I believe, in them. Yeah, so you can see it all in action.
Yeah.
Oh, my mom's here. Hey,
Mom. Kenny,
what
course have you worked on?
Yeah, and my nickname is Zoster the Toaster.
So cute. I guess I'm also like Zoe in that respect that I've bounced between so many different things. Started off working a lot in our Learn JavaScript course, or Introduction to JavaScript course. I've done Learn Go, lastly Learn Swift, and also some phaser work that also uses JavaScript. So well-versed in this, but I have never done P5 yet as of today. So I'm very excited to play the role of this student.
Yeah, I see we got a question that was saying, do we already need to know some JavaScript to do this? Absolutely not. This is built for complete beginners. If you know some JavaScript already, it might help, but totally good if you're a complete beginner. So let's work on getting people into the course that we're working on. In the chat, I am going to post a link to the specific project that we're working on. Let's see. So if you go to that URL, this should be the project that you're working on. You'll need to be signed into a Codecademy account, and so if you haven't signed up for a free Codecademy account, we also have a link to do that. Let's see. Let me grab that link. Again, this project should be open to free users. So if you don't have a Codecademy account, sign up for a free account using that link that I just I just posted, and then go back to this project. I see a question in the chat is, do we have to install a lot of stuff for this project? Nope, we're going to do it all on Codecademy, and everything should be like pre-installed for you. Is this a custom-made project? Yeah, so over the past week, I put together this project for this session, and so yeah, kind of custom-made for a live, 60-minute, maybe 90-minute coding session.
I saw another question about if we work with technical writers to build the course or if we mostly do them ourselves. Most of the stuff at Codecademy has actually been created in-house. But now as we try to expand our content library, we're also working with other content associates, other technical writers, also some subject matter experts. So hopefully that answers your question.
I'm currently writing we're building a lot of courses on R right now, and we're making a course that's about like linear regression and a little bit more like advanced in terms of like the math or the stats behind it. And so we have a great author who's a grad student at Columbia that's working on that. So we'll like reach out and get subject matter experts for when we don't know the material. Okay, cool. So I'm going to share my screen, which will be this project that we're going to be doing today. Let's see. And if people in chat could like start giving thumbs up that you are sitting on this project page, that would be great. And we will get started once we kind of have a critical mass of people that are on the project page.
I saw a question from Rebecca. Can you advise how to log in if you already had the free with the trial? So this project should be free for everyone, correct, Alex?
Yep.
Yeah, so Codecademy is actually entirely free. You can always upgrade to our pro offerings, but this project should be free. So cool. So yeah, you can use the same email even if you've already gone through our free trial and are a free user.
Yep, and again, if you don't have an account, you should be able to sign up for an account and not have to like put a credit card down or anything to get a free version of an account. And then again, go to the link, which I'll post one final time. And that's the project that we're going to be working in. I'll post it again, just in case, for people funneling in a little bit late. Okay, cool. And let's go ahead and get started. So you should see a little bit of code and then the output here. And we'll talk about like all of the different programming languages that go together and what we're actually working in here. But before we get started, we want to start with just like a little bit of interaction and experimenting with the code that we already have. So the first thing that I want people to do is to just change this number inside background from 200 to 20 and then hit save. You should see your visualization update where the background turns blacker. One of the things I really want people to, I want to encourage people to do is totally experiment as we're going through this. Like, oh, what happens if I change this first number in ellipse to 10 rather than 100? What happens if I change it to 300 rather than 100, right? So really, you can't break things. If you ever get your code in a state where you think it's broken or not working, you can hit this refresh button down in the bottom part of the screen, and that will send you back to the kind of starting state. So that will delete all of your code, which might be scary, but don't be afraid to play around, change things up. We'll go through what all of these numbers mean, how things are working, but I really want to encourage people to experiment on your own as we're going through this. Okay, cool. So let's talk about what p5.js is, what JavaScript is, what HTML is. So one thing that I want people to do is to take a look at the files that we currently have in our workspace. You'll see three files. One is called final.js. That's kind of the final final project that we're going to be working towards. So we don't need to look at that right now. But the files that I want to look at right now are sketch.js and index.html. And so if you've ever done any sort of web programming before, you might have heard of index.html. And yeah, I will zoom in on my screen a little bit. Hopefully that makes it a little bit better.
Thanks for posting about that in the comments.
Yeah. Right. So we have a HTML page and we have a .js file. And so what we're doing is we are making a website. And right now my output doesn't really look like a traditional website. Basically, it's only this kind of canvas that I can draw this shape on. But if I wanted to, I could incorporate this canvas into any website that I was building, where I could add any sort of HTML or CSS or any of the kind of web development stuff that you could learn elsewhere. You could take the skills that you're learning here in this very specific like P5JS course and apply that to a website that you are making on your own. So I really love P5JS as just a learning tool. I think it's a really interactive visual way to learn JavaScript fundamentals. And so that's what I use it for. I use it like not in a website type of way. I use it as a teaching tool for fundamental programming topics. But really what it is it's part of like this JavaScript ecosystem where you could be embedding these things in websites and HTML pages and all that sort of stuff. Zoe, I know that you're a P5 expert. What's your sense of like how P5 is used within like creative coding versus web design, that sort of stuff?
Sure, yeah. So P5 is actually sort of the second iteration of a set of creative coding tools that originally started with processing. So if you've heard of processing, that is written in Java. And it was started to get artists and educators a way to get into coding. So it's definitely comes from the standpoint of, creative coding, using it to do interesting art projects or anything really where you can express yourself creatively. So P5, where I've most often seen it are in art projects, but also as an educational tool. So the New York Department of Education actually has a program called CS for All, and they have a lot of curriculum materials for teaching students how to build stuff in P5. But you can see things like data visualizations as well, or just creating sort of like, fun animated things to add to a personal website. People are doing really interesting things with the 3D aspects of creative coding right now as well in P5. So lots of different applications.
Before joining Codecademy, I taught high school CS for a while, and I used P5 in like all of my intro courses, and even some of the most advanced courses. I have some projects for my students that I want to demo at the end of this course if we have time, because you really can do really, really cool things with P5, and I was proud of them and want to show it off. But anyways, let's get back to talking about kind of the setup here, which is kind of the most boring part of this. So we'll try to get through the setup quickly, and then we can get on to making some interactive drawings. If we dig into this,
Alex, really quick, there's also a poll going on. So for people who are super focused on what you have to say, if you just have a chance to select an option there in the poll so that we can see the range of experiences of everyone chimed in, that would be fantastic.
Cool. Yeah, and it looks like already we have, most people have never used P5 before, which is really cool. And we will link to awesome P5 resources as well. I know both Zoe and I really, really love P5. And so it's exciting to see, 94% of people that have never used it and are being introduced to it.
Well, you guys have to sell it on me today, because I have no idea still.
Yeah, Kenny hasn't done this stuff before, so he will be playing the role of the student.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so going back to looking at this index.html file, which basically we are going to ignore for 95% of this session, and we're just going to talk about it here in the setup. You'll see that we're connecting the HTML file to a file called sketch.js. That was the first file that we were working in, where there's like references to an ellipse and a background and all of these kind of you know, visual elements. That this is what's producing the canvas over here. And so basically all the HTML is doing right now is saying, connect my HTML page to that specific JavaScript file. If you want a preview of where we're going, you can switch this file name to final.js and run your code. And what that does is that's going to switch the file that the HTML file is talking to this other file, which has a bunch of other code in it. And look at this, we got a little game that we're gonna make. So basically that's all the HTML is doing. I'm gonna switch it back to sketch.js, which is our starting JavaScript file. There's one other part of this HTML file that I wanted to cover, and Kenny might be able to actually answer this well, where there's this script up top where there's this kind of like random URL. And so this is, Kenny, do you want to describe what this URL is doing, or like what the idea of a library or a package in JavaScript is?
Oh, so kind of like two separate questions there, right? Like let's answer the script part first. What we have here in the script is called a CDN, or a content distribution network. And that's basically saying like, I have a lot of code that's stored at this web address, and I don't want to include all of those lines of code directly into my project. So I have no idea how big P5 actually is, but it could be like thousands of lines long. So if we directly include that into our file, it might just look really clunky, and it might be hard to navigate. So what other people have done is created this CDN, this content distribution network, so that we can link directly to that code. And it works really fast because there's different spots along in the world. So depending on where your location is, you'll get the closest distribution network. So whatever server is actually spinning it up and providing it to your computer. So that's the heart of the script there. As far as libraries go, a library you can think of as pre-written code already. So I saw a question before about what's the difference between vanilla JavaScript and P5.js. And we've kind of mentioned that P5.js is a library. So what the creators of P5.js have done is they've taken vanilla JavaScript, just plain JavaScript on its own, and made it easier to do a really specific task. And in this case, I'm seeing some comments about Canvas as well, and that's right. We're using P5.js to manipulate that canvas. And if you're an artist, you also know the canvas you can draw on it to make shapes. That's what we're going to be using JavaScript to do. So P5.js is that subset for this library of JavaScript that we'll be working with today.
Yeah, I always kind of think of it like if you're a video game player, like libraries or packages. And I saw there was a question that like, is this like a module in Python? And yeah, they're all kind of similar, where it's kind of like bonus content that you can add on to your programming language, where, you know, vanilla JavaScript wouldn't know what an ellipse is. But if we install P5, or if we like add on P5, that will give us access to being able to use this ellipse function and the create canvas function and all of these like P5 specific things. If you take a look, and you certainly don't need to do this, if you go to this web address, you can see the P5 code, like the source code for P5. And so this is like, you know, I certainly don't understand what's going on here. The people that wrote P5 wrote this code, but this is like what we are importing into our project to give us access to P5. Cool. That's all of the setup. Again, all of this is kind of like the really technical setup that when I'm teaching this to my intro students, I don't really go that far into depth, because the fun part is like diving into P5 and starting to experiment with all of the cool things that you can do with it. So let's go back to our sketch.js file. Again, make sure that your index.html file is talking to that sketch.js file. It should be by default. And let's go ahead and get started. So again, feel free to play around with all of these functions and things that we're doing on your own as we're going through this. We're going to kind of walk you through a couple of little exercises that we drew up for you. So the first is playing around with this ellipse function. We have 4 parameters here. And I think a really good exercise is to go into the P5 documentation and try to understand what is going on with these four numbers. This is like an essential skill that all programmers eventually learn, is to learn how to dive into documentation. So this is the P5 documentation specifically for an ellipse. And you can see that an ellipse has 4 parameters, x, y, w, and h. And so those correspond to the x coordinate of the ellipse, the y coordinate of the ellipse, the width of the ellipse, and the height of the ellipse. And so if I go back to my P5 code, and I can make another ellipse, and I wrote in the exercise here, try to make a perfect circle with a radius of 100 in the center of the canvas. So right now my canvas is 500 pixels wide and 500 pixels tall. So if I put an ellipse right at 250, 250, so 250 pixels over and 250 pixels down, that'll put the center of this new ellipse right in the center of the canvas. And then let's make it wider than it is tall. So I'll make it 100 pixels wide and 20 pixels tall. Cool. Can pause for questions there. Feel free to play around with making multiple ellipses on your canvas. You can make them overlap. Zoe, Kenny, are you seeing any kind of common questions that are happening?
Yeah, I'm all in the QA right now. It's
Same here.
a lot of questions. I'm trying to get to each one of them.
Cool.
Let's see.
Yeah, a comment I saw in the chat is that you can make it a perfect circle by removing the fourth one, or the fourth parameter. So that would set the width and the height to 20 in this case.
Looks like an eye now.
Yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So next I wanted to show, this is again a little bit of like setup or technical stuff that is less fun than like all the cool experimenting that we're going to be doing in P5, but it's something that's going to be useful, and that's kind of debugging your code. So what happens if we make an error in our code? How do we know what's happening? It looks like nothing is changing or nothing is showing up. So I'm going to produce an error in my code. I'm going to delete one of these commas. So this ellipse function is now not going to work. And I'm going to run my code and nothing shows up, right? So if that happens, that usually means there's an error in your code somewhere. And we want to learn a little bit how to debug this. Again, hopefully we're going to be doing stuff that is simple enough that we'll be able to kind of spot errors by hand. Like, oh, I'm missing a comma there. But if you want to see the error messages, the way to do that in JavaScript is to open up the console in your web browser. And so there are a couple of ways to do this. And depending on what web browser you're using, there are different ways to do this. But I'm going to right click and click on inspect. And this opens up this big panel over here that you might not have seen before if you've never done any sort of web development. This is showing all the HTML on our page. So, there's a lot of different HTML sections on a Codecademy page. But if you go over to console, you'll now see where error messages are sent from JavaScript. One thing to note is that there are a lot of warnings that pop up based on like things that we're doing on Codecademy behind the scenes, right? There's like some dev tool thing that, there's a lot of things going on the Codecademy backend. I hid those warnings just to get them out of the way. And you'll see that, okay, now I see an error on sketch.js on line 8. And it's something about, oh, missing parentheses after argument list. That's not a great error message because really the error is like I'm missing a comma rather than missing a parenthesis. But you can see that, okay, there's an error somewhere on in my sketch.js file on line 8. So that's the way that I would recommend debugging. Again, that was right-clicking, going to inspect, and then opening up the console over here. Cool. Kenny, Zoe, any thoughts or comments about any of that stuff?
I love it. A question just came in the chat though. So guys, if you have questions, try to use the QA because I feel like chat is just running through and it'll be easier for us to identify. But one question came in about semicolons right now because I see in the setup function, we're using create canvas with a semicolon, background with a semicolon. How come ellipses don't need semicolons? Is there something going on there, Alex?
Yeah, so right, I will preface this with saying I am not a JavaScript expert. I would say that I am like an expert in P5 where I make these like, the way that I use P5 is to hack together cool art projects basically. And so I definitely don't know a ton of like proper JavaScript, I would say. I'm certainly not a web developer. I've never made a website in my life. And so I don't know like proper JavaScript. So maybe this is a question better for you, Kenny. What's the deal with semicolons in JavaScript?
There's like a meme that says like, yeah, you kind of need them, you kind of don't. It's optional, honestly. But the goal of the semicolon, and you'll see this for a lot of other languages, is that it terminates a line. So each line contains like a statement of code. JavaScript has an interpreter that automatically inserts semicolons for you. So when the computer reads it, there will be semicolons for it. It knows when to, or it smartly guesses when to insert that semicolon for you. And there's like really rare cases in which a missing semicolon is actually gonna break your code. But since you're sharing your screen right now, Alex, can you do me one thing and take line 7 and put it on line 6, keeping the semicolons there?
Yeah.
And save your code?
Yeah.
Okay, so that still makes sense, right? Because there's background 200 semicolon eclipse with all the arguments semicolon. So the computer actually reads it as 2 separate lines. Yeah, if we remove that and try to save it,
yeah,
we got an error.
We got an error, and we can look up what that error is by going into our console.
Stop telling on yourself, Alex, says Sam.
Right, we can go into our console and we can see, oh, there's an unexpected identifier. Again, kind of a confusing error message. Basically what that means is like, oh, I'm now seeing, JavaScript is seeing a closing parentheses and isn't expecting to see a space and the letter E after that. It's expecting to see something like a semicolon or a new line. But you can basically see, okay, we have an error on line 6 somewhere. Cool. That's
sorry about the police siren for chat. That was
my neighbors are like installing a refrigerator right now, so there's like horrible drills going on in the background that I was concerned would be loud.
Okay.
All good. I'm just waiting for I share an office with my boyfriend, and so I was kind of like, hey, just so you know, doing a live stream with like 500 people. Hence the space background.
For people asking about how to open up the console in different web browsers, another tool that all programmers use is Googling it. So if you're on Safari or if you're on Firefox and the behavior is slightly different, I know in some web browsers you need to like dive a little bit deeper into the preferences and like turn on a click box to allow access to developer tools or the console. But basically my recommendation is Google open console in Safari or Firefox or JavaScript and try to follow those instructions.
I had one question I wanted to answer. I saw, so people asked about doing this off of Codecademy. So you can definitely do this on your own computer with a text editor like VS Code, Sublime Text. But P5 actually has their own editor that they've built in the browser. And what's great is that it already gets you set up with the correct files and the setup and draw functions. So I'm going to drop their editor into the Zoom chat so people can check that out. I also like using Glitch if anyone's used Glitch before, or Replit. So those are 2 different browser-based IDEs that you can run P5 from, as long as in Glitch and you'll just have to link the library, but in the P5 editor, the library is already linked for you.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna move on. If again, I think the discussion about like opening the console, I think that that's a good one, but I want to get to some of like the exciting parts about P5. So we can always loop back and talk more about like debugging and error messages and the console at the end of the session. Step 6 here, again, I'm going to kind of fly through a little bit quickly. It's basically introducing another function of drawing a shape, which is a rectangle. You can look at the documentation for this rectangle, but it's very similar to the ellipse, where I'm going to give it a coordinates and then a length and a height. So I'm going to make a, let's see, I think I said, try to draw one that overlaps with my ellipse. So I'll put it at 200, so 200 in the X direction. Let's see, 150 in the Y direction, so that's coming down. And then I'll make it really skinny and very tall. Cool. One thing to note about this rectangle function is that unlike the ellipse one, where the position was, in the ellipse, the position was measured from the center, the rectangle function, this position is measured from the top left corner. So this point, 200 over and 150 down, that's the top left corner of this rectangle. So that's just another shape that you can draw. P5 has a bunch of other shapes: triangles, quadrilaterals, you know, a bunch of other shapes. Cool. All right, here's where things get fun. What I want you to do is to replace one of these, the X coordinate of one of your ellipse with ellipse, what is it? With the variable mouse X. And we'll talk about what this variable is and what it means and where it comes from. But go ahead and replace the X coordinate of an ellipse with mouse X and run your code, and then mouse over your canvas. You'll see that the ellipse kind of follows your mouse now. Did I skip? I also skipped fill. So let me quickly do fill, and then we'll talk about what's happening here. Another function that you might want to use is fill. This sets the color of all of your shapes, and it takes 3 numbers between 0 and 255. So again, just as an example, I'm going to put in kind of 3 random numbers here. And all my shapes have turned green. And I'm going to go one step further, and I'm going to change, let's say, this second number to mouse Y. And now as my mouse goes up and down, the color of my shapes change. Okay, cool. So we just did a ton of new stuff. Zoe, do you want to talk a little bit about what these mouse X and mouse Y variables are and how the draw loop works?
Sure. So mouse X and mouse Y are values that are part of the P5 library. And what they do is that they grab the current coordinates, the current location of your cursor. So Alex, do you mind mousing over the canvas again?
Yeah, let me, there we go.
Cool. So as you can see, I know it's kind of glitchy because of Zoom video stuff, but this circle is currently following where Alex's cursor is on the X-axis specifically. So as he moves his cursor to the left, the ellipse will move to the left. Similarly, with the fill function right here, it's changing the color value of the green value based off of where Alex's cursor location is on the Y-axis. So that's why we're getting the color changes. As he moves the cursor up and down, it's changing that green value and changing the overall color. The draw loop. So the draw loop is something pretty specific to P5. So as you noticed, we started off this project with two built-in functions already, or two functions that are written there already, setup and draw. And to do something in P5, you really should have both of them. Setup runs just once at the beginning of your program. So that's why we have the create canvas function there. That's where we're determining the size of our canvas. And then in the draw loop runs, I believe it's 60 frames per second. And what happens is it's going through everything that's in that function 60 times in 1 second. So if you're familiar with the concept of animation, animation is really just a still image that gets repeated at such a fast time that to our eyes, it appears like movement is happening. Same thing's happening in the draw loop. And I can demonstrate this. Alex, would you mind moving the background to the setup function? Yeah. Here's one way that you can actually see this happening in real time. If we move the background to the setup function, that means that it's only going to be drawn once. And then everything that happens in the draw function is going to be drawn right on top of that. So what should happen now is you can actually see every single iteration of this, of the shapes getting drawn, and it leaves this kind of trace element to it, which is kind of cool and something you can play around with creatively too, if you like that kind of look. Especially because you can get rid of the, what do you call it? The line that goes, the stroke.
Yeah,
you can actually take out the stroke.
No stroke.
So we have this built-in no stroke function that will take off that black line that you have on either side. And then you can actually see how this can be a really interesting paint program. If you had something, if you had a circle that was attached to both your mouse X and mouse Y cursor. So if you want to, yeah, Alex will change the second parameter over to mouse Y.
Here's a good demonstration of commenting. I'm going to comment out some of these other shapes, just so now I only have the ellipse that's connected to my mouse.
So now the circles are just going to follow wherever Alex has his cursor on the canvas, and you start to get this really cool paint program. And you can change the fill. So again, it's dependent on where the cursor is. And so he just subbed out the red value, so it's equal to wherever the cursor is positioned on the canvas for mouse X.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the other things that we did very quickly here was add this fill function, which takes 3 parameters. So the way that colors work in P5 by default is by using RGB color values. So you can kind of think of it as the first value is the amount of red you want in your color. The second value is the amount of green that you want in your color. And the third value is the amount of blue that you want in your color. And the amount goes from 0 to 255. And so you can actually see when I mouse over past 255, the color kind of stops changing, right? You can think of like, okay, this number here goes beyond 255. It becomes 500, right? When I'm down in the bottom right corner, where I'm 500 pixels over and 500 pixels down. And so it's as if I had subbed in 500, 500 there. And that's going to just be that yellow that we saw when I was down this bottom right corner. So you can see if you go past 255, it just kind of maxes out to whatever the 255 value would be.
Can I also say something specific about the fill function?
Yes.
So fill is going to determine the color for any shapes that come after it. So if you want to change the color for a shape, so it's different from the one before it. So if you noticed before when we were drawing and we had a bunch of shapes up, they were all the same color and all changing the same way. But if you call the fill function again before another shape that you want to have a different color to, then you just call fill again with a different set of values for the color that you want.
Yeah, so this will make it so I fill a certain color and then draw the circle that's attached to my mouse, and then I change the fill, I change my paintbrush, and I draw 2 more circles. So we should see one circle is connected to, the color is connected to my mouse, and then the other 2 circles are just this ugly gray color that I made. One good, a tool that I use, and this is like, a very basic tool. If you just Google RGB color picker, Google has this nice little color picker, and you can see that like, okay, this blue value would be 64, 37, 196. So if you want to like, if you don't want to do the guesswork of what is this color going to make if I put in these 3 values, you can use this tool and get, or whatever pretty colors that you want. Let's see. I see someone says no stroke is causing my shapes to disappear. That's probably because you don't have a fill. Let's see if I turn off my fill, meaning the fill is just empty. And I've also, oh no, my fill is white. So if I also didn't have a background. So if you turn off if you do no strokes and your shapes disappear, you're probably painting white shapes on a white background with no border.
Hey guys, it's Elisa.
Hi, Lisa.
I've been over here in stealth mode, sorry. There's a question from an anonymous attendee. If they joined late, how do they find the lesson?
Yes. So let me grab.
And I'm asking that because if we see it once, there's probably a good number of people. Yeah.
Totally. So in chat, I'm posting the link to all of the lessons that we're doing for this entire conference. And the one that we are working on specifically is the 4th one, Creative Coding with P5.js. So if you want this specific project, it's that link. And then if you want to do later sessions, you can click on this Learn from Home conference, and that will take you to all the other sessions that we're going to be running today. Thanks for getting that, Elisa.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Yeah,
there is a question about why are we using functions if we're not calling them?
Yeah.
Which is a question that comes up a lot if folks have programmed before and they get into P5. So P5 is a little interesting in this way. The setup and the draw functions are 2 functions that you actually don't need to call. Alex, I don't know if you know a bit more about why that is, but I think P5 is really designed for folks who actually don't have familiarity with coding. And so I think they're trying to make it as easy as possible for folks to start, would be my assumption.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. You can always think of like the setup function gets called once at the start of your program, and then the draw function gets called 60 times a second. So if you're familiar with loops in programming, you can imagine as if somebody has written a loop that happens 60 times a second, and the draw function is being called in there. Okay, cool. So again, we're able to make cool drawings, but we're also learning some kind of programming fundamentals. I think the fundamental programming concept that we've seen so far is this idea of variables, where this variable is storing a value, and then we are plugging that value into this fill function. So that's kind of big programming concept number 1 that we've learned, is this idea of variables. If we have time, we can define some of our own variables. The other programming concept that I want to cover is the idea of conditionals. So a conditional is kind of a branch in your program, where if one thing is true, then a certain chunk of code is going to run, and if it's not true, then a different chunk of code is going to run. So you can see that kind of the pseudocode for this is if some condition, code block A, else code block B. And so I'm going to show that off in, well, first of all, I'm going to clean up my canvas a little bit. I'm going to do just an ellipse that follows my mouse.
Maybe we can move the background back to draw.
Yeah, that's a good call. Right, the background, you can kind of think of that as like painting over all of your own work. So when I move the background into the draw function, now what I'm doing is I'm still drawing an ellipse 60 times a second, but I'm also painting over all of those old ellipses 60 times a second using the background function. Okay, cool. So I'm going to write a conditional here, and my condition is going to be checking to see if my mouse is on the right side of the screen. And so that condition is mouse, is mouse X greater than or equal to, I suppose, 250. So before we hit run, and in fact, there'll be a syntax error if I hit run right now, but mouse greater than or equal to 250 is false, 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 while my mouse is over here. And then as soon as I pass that 250 mark, which is somewhere in the center of this canvas, it would flip to true, right? Now my mouse X is greater than or equal to 250. So if that condition is true, I want to, let's say, fill my circle with red. If that condition is not true, which is this else statement, I'm going to fill my circle with green. So depending on where my mouse is, I'm going to set a different fill. And then no matter what, I'm going to draw an ellipse afterwards, right? The ellipse is outside of these curly brackets saying what to do if this is true or if it's not true. So let's go ahead and run this. And we'll see. So the condition is false right now. Mouse X is not greater than or equal to 250. And now it's true. Right, so that's the idea of a conditional in programming, where I'm able to ask a question. I'm able to say, is my mouse on the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen, and do different things depending on it. So Zoe, what are some cool and creative coding things that we could do with this?
Let's see. Sorry, I've been in like question answering land. Cool creative coding things.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, changing the shape, the color. We could change the shape of it to, you could even have things you can actually add. I mean, this is getting a little far advanced, so probably not what we're going to do, but just for the sake of examples, you could bring shapes into P5. You can bring shapes, you can bring videos, you can bring GIFs in. So you could have the video change or the image change depending on where it is on the canvas. But yeah, changing what the shape is, changing the dimensions of the shape that you're working with.
Yeah, so here, let me run my code again. So now you'll see both the color and the shape will change depending on if my mouse is on the left or right side of the screen. Okay, we have, how late does this go to? This goes till noon, Kenny?
Noon.
Yeah.
Okay,
12.
good. So we do have a good amount of time. So maybe we can slow down a little bit and answer questions. Are you seeing any super common questions that we could answer?
Well, to Joseph specifically, you just pasted his code in the text. And when I copied and pasted his code in, it seems like that you have background misspelled. So I see background instead of background with a G.
Yep.
So
and ellipse as well, with 2 L's rather than 1.
Yes, yes, catching errors. So that was the power of debugging.
Yeah, and again, I'll show this off, and so I'll run my code with a typo with ellipse, and now you can see that.
Still running.
Yeah, maybe my connection to Codecademy has gone out. I'm gonna refresh that page.
Guys, keep your questions coming in the Q&A panel.
Absolutely.
We have answered 110 so far, and we will continue to go through it. I just don't want to have the chat too muddied. Bad typing.
Yeah, so you can see, hey, I just introduced a typo, and it's not working. So again, I'm going to just demo opening up my console, and you can see that ellipse is not defined with 1 L. So basically it's saying, hey, you're trying to call a function that I don't know what it means, because I don't know what this this typo means. And you can see that it's on line 14 of my code. Any other common questions that you think is worth talking about right now, Kenny, or are people seeming pretty good right
one
now?
Really early on, I think this will probably relate to our next topic, but it seems like Lila Shaman was trying to run final.js to see the the final project, and they weren't able to get anything happening. So once we get up to that point, I think it'd be nice to just like reiterate what we did to get the final solution up and running.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. If you want to see the final solution, if you go back to your HTML page, and again, this is kind of all we are doing here is creating an HTML page, and we happen to be connecting sketch.js to that HTML page. If you change the file that the JavaScript file that's talking to this HTML page from sketch to final, we now have this project. Maybe this is a good time to talk about what's going on in this project. So Zoe, as you'll see, this project is like a little game where you try to get to the end, and if you won. But if you walk into the walls, it says, you are dead, go back to the green square and start over. So how do you imagine conditionals are being used in a project like this?
Yeah, I'd imagine something that is able to detect if the ellipses, well, this is really interesting because this is always a really big challenge actually for P5 is edge detection. So somehow it's able to determine if it has touched something that has maybe a red fill value.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Yes, so maybe you can somehow, right, basically you have to think about the question that is being asked, which is, the question that seems to be being asked here is, have I run into the wall, right? Or has my mouse gone over the wall? And Zoe is saying like, okay, maybe one way to detect that is to be able to say, is my mouse over this red fill value? The way that it's actually working is, rather than saying, is my mouse over this red fill value, we're saying, is my mouse in a very specific like region of this screen? And so
so you're doing it with coordinates.
Yeah, so I'm doing it with coordinates. There might be a way to do it with color value, but I'm not exactly sure.
I don't know. I would love to know this because this is actually something that comes up a lot with building games, and B5 is edge detection, collision detection.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's step back. Again, I'll come back here. Let me, I'll get rid of no stroke as well. I'm going to draw a rectangle in the middle of the screen, or like middle-ish of the screen. So at X 200, Y 300, and I'll make it 100 wide and 50 small. And then I'm also going to draw an ellipse that follows my mouse. Sorry, not 50-50. So I want the X coordinate of the ellipse to be mouse X, the Y coordinate to be mouse Y, and I'll make it a small little circle, 20 by 20.
Really fast before we get too far in this project, I've noticed I've been doing this a couple times with the questions, but P5 has their reference online. So I'm seeing, I've just got a lot of questions about how do you add text? How do you change the kind of color type if you want to use like names of colors versus RGB values? I'd highly recommend you go check out p5js.org/reference. A lot of those questions will be answered for you there.
Yeah, we've linked to a couple of places in the reference over here on the left. And so if you click on that, this one sent you to ellipse. Then you can say, you can look at reference and you can see, here's a bunch of stuff about color. Here are all the other shapes that you can draw. You can draw lines and points. Text is, let's see, I know text is called the text function. So typography, here's how you write text, but you can change the font, you can change the font size, you can change the style, you can change the width, all that sort of good stuff. So again, that was going to P5 and clicking on the reference to give you the documentation for all of that sort of stuff. And as you can see, there's tons of different stuff. Here's the built-in mouse stuff. There's also one that's kind of useful is mouse is pressed. So you can, there's a built-in variable that will be either true or false, depending on whether your mouse is pressed. Here's a little example where if mouse is pressed, I draw a circle, otherwise I draw a rectangle. So mouse is pressed is a cool little thing that gives you more interactivity.
Alex, while you're there, I'm seeing two questions in the Q&A panel where they're asking about rotating or turning an ellipse. Can we look into that?
Yes, that unfortunately is not super easy. I think unless I don't know an easy way to do it, the way that I have done that in the past is so you can rotate the entire canvas and then draw normally. So let me bring in this. And this gets like fairly complicated. So in setup, I'm going to rotate the entire canvas. You can see that this parameter has something to do with pi. You can think of that as like the amount of like, the angle that you're rotating it around. And so if I do this, I lost my connection to Codecademy again. If I do this, ooh, that didn't work. Let's see. Well, on line 8, I have an error. Oh, I deleted my opening curly bracket for some reason. Cool. That didn't even work. I thought rotated the entire canvas. So like basically 0, 0 was no longer in the top right corner. It would be like down here, and then it would draw everything on the diagonal.
Oh, no, that you want to get, I believe it's translate.
Translate? Okay. Let me see.
I think that's maybe what you're looking for.
Yeah, so translate and rotate are used in conjunction with each other all the time.
Yeah.
So let me, again, this is me kind of.
You're learning live. You're learning,
yeah.
learning in public.
That also did not seem to work.
Okay.
But that's a good thing to just grab the exact code here.
Sorry, Alex, what are you trying to do?
We're trying to draw a shape at an angle to rotate the shape.
Oh, okay. And rotate didn't work.
There we go. Well, then I drew over it. Interesting. So maybe if I threw it down in the draw function, that would work. But there's a square that's rotated where basically I've rotated the entire canvas. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, translate, I believe, changes the origin.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So 0, 0 is now in the very center of the screen rather than the top left corner.
Yeah.
And then rotate is rotating that canvas. Yeah, that's a good question though. And that's the kind of stuff that's super fun where it's like, if you want to do this sort of thing, you can, basically Google it and you will find somebody that has that question before, and then you can play around with it.
Absolutely.
So Alex, for that, now I'm curious though. Like if we put that, the code that you have highlighted directly into draw instead, would that work the same way, or?
Let's see what happens. So that is working the same way. And now let me switch. Let's see if I can get this rectangle to follow my mouse.
Oh, do you think it's gonna spin? What? Oh,
yeah.
So I believe that with translate, it kind of like defies the draw loop. I remember because I was actually doing this for my 100 days of coding. I was trying to get an earth to rotate. And so it actually, it will end, it doesn't apply cumulatively like other animations do in the draw loop. I actually just linked to Gene Kogan has a really great P5 transformations article online. So I just threw that into the chat, but he talks a lot about getting things to rotate. And I believe he has a specific thing about animating rotation that he does that has to do with using a certain frame count and radians.
Interesting.
So whether you're rotating something along its own axis or rotating it along a separate axis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Helpful stuff. So yeah. So you should
Cool.
definitely look into that resource if you're interested in it.
Jason in the chat mentioned try rotate Z. Is that something in the documentation that we can look into before moving on?
Sure.
That sounds like that's part of the 3D stuff would be my guess.
Oh,
because
yeah.
so Z values only exist in 3D space. So in 2D space we have X and Y values, and then in 3D space we have X, Y, and Z values. So that's the 3D documentation is also in there as well.
Cool.
But good call on looking into the documentation. That's exactly what you should be doing.
Agreed. Okay, I'm gonna go back to this idea of kind of edge detection. And so the problem that I'm gonna try to solve here is how do we tell when this circle is inside the square? So far we've been able to say, I know when my circle is to the left or to the right of this square. And so, or of the left half of the canvas or the right half of the canvas. The question of, is my circle inside the square is a little bit more complicated. There are in fact 4 statements that we have to think about. It's, is my circle below the top of the square? And is my circle to the left of the right of the square? And is my circle above the bottom of the square? And is my circle to the right of the left side of the square? Right? There are 4 conditions that all have to be true at the same time in order for me to be inside this square. And so this is a really good example of using something called Boolean operators, which kind of lets you combine your conditionals that you're writing in these if statements. So I can say something like, for right now, let's just do, is my circle in the bottom right corner? So is it below the halfway point? And is it to the right of the halfway point? So to the right of the halfway point is mouse X greater, actually I'm gonna do this above drawing the circle because we're gonna change the color of the circle. So is my mouse on the right side of the screen? That's is mouse X greater than or equal to 250? And again, it's only 250 in this case because my canvas is 500 by 500. Mm-hmm. Now I want to say, okay, it's on the right half of the screen and it's on the bottom half of the screen, meaning that it will be in the bottom right corner. To use and in JavaScript, it's 2 ampersands. So mouse is on the right side of the screen and my Y position of the mouse is on the bottom of the screen. So that's mouse Y greater than 250. And if this is true, I'm going to, again, just for like testing purposes, I'm gonna fill in red. Otherwise, I'm gonna fill blue, RGB. So not true here because I'm only on the right side of my screen. I'm not right and bottom, but it is true down here, right? And so we can almost even like draw where this is true, right? If I got rid of this rectangle. I can kind of draw where this condition is true, and you'll see that it's only true in the bottom right section of the screen. So an exercise that I would do with my students as like a homework exercise is I would draw out different regions and I would say, you know, how would you like write the conditional that changes the circle to red when you're in the bottom right or the top left? You know, write a conditional that's true when you're inside a rectangle in the center of the screen. So let's do that. Let's do rectangle in the center of the screen. So, and Zoe, I'm about to call on you to do some math.
Oh, God.
Follow.
I like this stuff because of the art aspect. Let's be real.
So between the two of us, one of us should be able to answer it. So let's see.
All right.
Okay, so I'm drawing,
Phone a friend from Kenny.
so I want my circle to be red when I'm inside this square. And so I need to write a conditional. And again, it's going to be 4 conditions because I'm going to say, am I below the top? Am I above the bottom? Am I to the right of the left side? And am I to the left of the right side?
Okay.
So what would the condition for am I below the top of this square be?
All right, so we're drawing it at 100 or 200, sorry. Y. See, already I'm like, X, Y. Ooh.
Yep.
So below 200,
yeah,
which
so
actually
because
is
we're
greater
saying
than
below
200.
Yes, exactly.
That's the other confusing thing, is because of the 0, 0 starting, talk about math, the 0, 0 starting in the upper left corner, not in the middle. So Y increases as you go down. Yes, so above 200.
So if mouse Y is greater than or equal to 200, that means I'm below the top of my rectangle.
Yes.
And all right, let's do above the bottom of the rectangle.
So it's what's the height? 70.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it would be 270. So less than 270.
What is less than 270?
Oh, sorry, mouse Y.
Yep. So we care about mouse Y because again, we care about the
We're
Y position.
Thinking about the Y values.
Yep. So I want mouse Y to be less than 270.
And so I just got that from looking at the Y value parameter, which is 200, and then the height parameter, which is 70, and just added 70 to 200.
Cool. And then let's do left wall.
So left is being drawn at 100, so greater than 100 for mouse X.
Yep, mouse X, we care about left and right for this case, is greater than 100, and then right wall.
Yeah, so the edge of the right wall is going to be 150 because the width is 50, so adding that to 100, so we're going to make it less than 150. I can do math. Yay.
Yeah.
Didn't need me, Zoe.
The support was, what took me over the edge. It's what got me there.
Gotcha.
Let's see, and it's not working. So what have we done? I wrote mouse X. So that one's good. That's my Y is greater than the top. My Y is less than the bottom. My X is greater than the left side, but then I was checking the mouse X for the right wall when I want to be checking the, I was checking the mouse Y, but I want to be checking the mouse X. And there we go. That error that I made actually is was unintentional, but it's a good learning moment in that that was a logical error. There was nothing wrong with my syntax. So if I had that have mouse Y and I'm like, oh shoot, it's not working. If I went in and looked at my console, there wouldn't be an error being thrown anywhere, right? The JavaScript is happy with this, but it was a logical error in that me translating my, my thoughts to code, I didn't do that correctly. And so it wasn't behaving as I expected it to do.
Alex, I always just blame the computer because I don't think I do anything wrong. No.
Right, of course.
Obviously, it's the computer's fault.
Yeah.
Why don't you understand my intentions?
Alex, can you quickly clarify why the rectangle is changing color too? Someone asked that question.
So the thing that we are branching on in this condition, so again, we just did a bunch of work for the logic of am I inside the rectangle or am I not inside the rectangle? Oh, but sorry, I think I misunderstood your question. You're saying why is the rectangle also changing?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a great question. The rectangle is also changing because basically it's on the next loop of the draw function. So I set the fill, I draw the ellipse, and then the draw function starts again. And the fill is still set to, I start the draw function again, I draw my next rectangle, and the fill is still set to whatever it was set based on this conditional. So it's like, if I changed the fill down here to black, I believe this will make the rectangle always black. Because I set the fill I draw the ellipse, I then set the fill to black, I then draw the rectangle, and then I check to see what the next ellipse should be drawn as. I see the code that makes the ellipse trail. This is because we're currently not drawing the background. if I draw a background, if I make a background of some color, the background, again, you can kind of think of the background as painting over all of your own drawings, where at the start of the draw loop, I just paint over everything that I previously did and then draw a new rectangle and a new ellipse. So the stuff is still there, but I'm just like painting over it.
Alex, I saw a request in chat for us to drop the current code into the chat, maybe?
Sure. Do that. Might be ugly.
Do with it what you will, guys.
Yeah.
Play around with it. That's what we're doing right now. So encourage you all in the chat to also play around with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Your output doesn't have to look anything like our output. You can change the background color. You can change the color of the rectangles or the circles, whatever you like. And time check, it's almost 11:40.
Cool. Okay, so I think there are, oh man, there's so much stuff that I want to do.
Hold on, Alex.
Yes.
It's Bizarro Elisa again.
Yes, hello, Bizarro Elisa.
I think, can we see in the chat, would everybody like a 5-minute breather in between now and the next session? Can we just see yeses and nos in the chat real quick?
Everyone is saying yes. Woo, that's a lot of yeses.
A lot of yes.
I need some coffee.
Yes, I need some coffee.
Okay, all right. Well, that was decided. So about 15 minutes left. Okay, back to my cave.
Okay, so for the final 15 minutes, what I want to do is I want to just show the code for this, for the little maze game that I made, and we can talk about it. I want to show off cool projects that you can make with P5, and then I want to answer questions if people have questions. So let's look at this final JS code. The first thing that I want to point out is, I'm going to run it. Whoops, and let me, again, switch the HTML to be talking to final. Right. So there are a couple of things here that we haven't talked about yet, where I'm creating my own variable based on whether or not I'm dead in the game. And that variable is changing. So that's something that we didn't get to, is like creating our own variables. So far, we've only used mouse X, mouse Y. The thing that I want to show is the really, really complicated conditional statement that I wrote to check whether I'm inside these walls. And so that is this mess. And again, I can I don't know if it's useful posting this in chat or not, but this is a giant, crazy conditional that is checking, am I inside this rectangle? Or this is a logical operator that we didn't get to. Just like I was able to use and to say, am I below the top, and am I above the bottom, and am I to the left, and am I to the right? Another logical operator that you can do is or. So basically what this is am I in this rectangle, or am I in this rectangle, or am I in this rectangle, or this one, or that one? So it's this big, big, big if statement that if I'm inside any of these rectangles, I set that to a variable called is alive. So actually what I did was, am I inside the path, not the rectangle? So am I in the path? So am I in that rectangle, or that rectangle, or that rectangle? So it's a big, crazy conditional checking to see if I'm on the path. I'm storing that in a variable named is alive. And then if I'm alive and I'm not dead, again, don't worry too much about this. Am I not dead? And basically what that is doing is that's making it so when I die, I have to go back to the start to become alive again. So if I'm alive, then I set the fill of my circle to, what is that? To the nice teal. And if I'm dead, I set it to red. So that's kind of what, basically, I think that's as far as we got into this game of you can make really complicated edge detection now based on ands and ors. we have any questions about that in chat?
Someone asked if a switch case would work here, switch statement.
Yeah, so a switch statement is similar to an if statement. I think a switch statement might be more appropriate if we had more things that we wanted to do. Right now, we're only interested in doing one thing or the other. A switch statement might be appropriate if there were like 4 or 5 things that we wanted to do. So if case 1 is true, do thing 1. If case 2 is true, do thing 2. If case 3 is true, do thing 3. Right now, we're kind of binary. We only have 2 different cases. But yeah, a switch statement is similar to what we're doing there. Deborah, the entire code from this example is in your, you already have access to that. It's named final.js. And again, to see that, open up the HTML file and change the JavaScript file that your code is talking to from Sketch, which is the first file that you were working in, to final.js. And then if you run, that code should pop up. Question about if we did it based on the color that the mouse is touching, would that be easier? That would certainly be easier, but I think I'm not aware of P5. I don't think the P5, we don't have, actually, we don't have like variables associated with the mouse of what color it's touching. We only have the position of the mouse.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the references in the reference document.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Here's all of the things that P5 knows about the mouse. It knows its position. It knows if the mouse button is pressed. It knows stuff about the mouse wheel,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't really know that the mouse is sitting over a certain color.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent question from Alessandra of, are there good P5.js open source projects? So this is a good time to shout out really awesome P5 creators.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite, and I think Zoe's favorite as well, is one of Zoe's professors from NYU. He runs a YouTube channel called The Coding Train, where he does projects in P5. I would really recommend looking at The Coding Train. Dan is an awesome dude.
Yeah.
He's a great teacher, and he makes really, really cool projects. It's like, you know, these are basically 50-minute long videos where if you want to code along with him, he shows you writing up the code, but then you get to see his cool output too, if this one ends with cool output. It's part 1 of 2.
Yeah, it's great. And some of these are actually real classes that he teaches at NYU. So he has this whole section on nature of code, which is also a book that you can find online. But that was a class in my program at ITP. So you can have access to that without going to NYU, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I know Schiffman is like part of the people that build P5 or part of that organization. And
yeah, so he's part of the Processing Foundation. The person who actually started P5 is Lauren McCarthy, who also used to be she's a teacher at ITP. She was one of my teachers. She's over at USC, I think UCLA, one of those schools in LA. And she was the student of Casey Rias and Ben Fry at MIT, who were the creators of the processing. So she and Daniel Schiffman kicked it off P5 at ITP NYU, actually the year I started in, what was that, 2015. But it's open source, so if you're also interested in working on the project and on the code base itself, they have a really amazing open source community.
Yeah. I wanted to show off something that my students did when I was a teacher. This was all done. This was all done in P5. These were my most advanced students. So they had done like 3 or 4 years of computer science at this point, and so they were, you know, they were pretty comfortable with coding. And so this was a project on genetic algorithms, which is like a type of ML AI thing. And so they wrote this program to algorithmically draw different drawings. So in this case, the most
cool.
So you'll see as the program runs, we're finding better and better and better drawings of Mona Lisa. So this was a cool little one. Let's see. Cool. Any, I feel like now is a good time to answer questions. We'll hang out for a bit. If you guys want to take off or take a break before the next session, I suppose I should like link to the next sessions. I'll do that in chat right now. Thank you for joining, everyone. This was super fun. I had a great
Yeah, this was awesome. I really, really enjoyed this. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I wanted
Hi,
to
Lisa.
say, yeah, I'm just gonna say hi and bye. And I'm putting a link to the Discord server in the chat also. So if everybody here wants to keep chatting with each other, the people that were over in the HTML session right now, they've all moved over to Discord. So maybe there's some cross-pollination opportunities. You guys are awesome. I'll see you
Cool.
later.
Thanks, Elisa.
Thanks, Elisa.
Thanks, Elisa.
I just have a quick question about Glitch. Alex, do you mind navigating to Glitch?
Sure. By the way, I just posted the links to the next session. What is it? Glitch.io, Zoe?
I believe so, yeah. Oop, nope, that's not it.
Don't go there, guys.
JK. So I'm on it. It's just glitch.com.
Okay.
So Glitch allows you to do projects just right from your browser rather than doing it on your computer and then having to upload your files to get them online. And it will generate a web page for you. So if you saw, Alex just created a new project and it gave it the automatically generated name marble-classic-fireplant. So if you, Alex, if you go to show for a second,
Show.
it's where those little sunglasses are. And you go to in a new window, actually in a new window.
I don't know if that, oh, there we go.
So you actually have a cool new web page right now that any of you guys can visit at marble-classic-fireplant. I think it's like glitch.me is the full URL. Do you mind going back to the page for a second so you can see the full URL? Yeah, .glitch.me. So if you want to have a project immediately hosted online, it's super easy to do that with Glitch. The other great part about Glitch is, Alex, if you don't mind going back to the homepage for Glitch.
Yep.
So the really powerful thing about Glitch is it's a community of creators and you can remix different people's projects. So if, Alex, you can go back to, there's a way to get back to the home screen quickly. But Glitch will have like different projects featured. You can go look through curated collections that people have. Ooh, ideas, that's a great one. Why don't you go to starterchart.js? So this is what it looks like when you're looking at someone else's project. It would load the project below and you can see the project itself. There should be a link, on the, there's usually like a remix your own button. So it's kind of right below where the project is. So Alex, if you click on that remix your own, if you scroll down.
This guy. Yep.
So if you click that, it immediately forks that specific project, basically makes a copy of that project with all the code in it for you to play with. So actually, when I'm teaching P5, I usually do a template in Glitch. And so then learners can just take what I've built and then remix the code from there. So it's really fun to be able to like experiment with different projects. If you see a project that you think is really cool and want to know how it's built or you want to modify it, Glitch is a really great place to get started for that.
Yep, agreed. I'm seeing comments in the chat about like Codecademy Pro and paid Codecademy. One thing that, so for people that don't have Codecademy Pro, so Codecademy Pro gives you access to a bunch of courses and our projects and quizzes and all that sort of stuff. But we have, you know the address for the scholarship thing?
I don't.
Codecademy scholarship. So if you don't have a pro account, we started a Codecademy scholarship. So right now, due to COVID-19 and everyone being at home, we wanted to give access to to scholarships for students that are stuck at home and teachers that are stuck at home and need resources. So if you Google Codecademy Scholarship or go to codecademy.com/learnfromhome, if you have a .edu or a .k12 or other email addresses, I think work at this point, you can get a 90-day scholarship for pro, and that will give you access to all of our courses. So go there if you want to play around with Codecademy more. Until when? So when we started the scholarship, we said that it was going to be 90 days. The idea was going to the end of the school year. I think that is still currently the plan. And so we're like 30 days into that. So if you sign up for a scholarship here, you should get about 60 days of free pro. Again, awesome. This is only people that have a .edu or like a education email address.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you don't have a .edu, but you have like I think we're working with this new system that Spotify uses too to check out educational credentials. And if you have any troubles, just email our customer service team.
Yeah. Cool.
Any other questions?
Are there curriculum resources for P5JS? Not on Codecademy yet, although Zoe and I would love that to be the case. Yes. Zoe and I really want to make a P5 course. So if you enjoyed this, perhaps give us feedback, and that might happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Email Codecademy and tell them, I really want a P5 course. But for real, yeah, Alex and I really do want to make a course. And I've talked with my friend who works at the New York Department of Education where they use P5 in the classroom. And so it would be a really great opportunity for their students. But I think lots of students, P5's an awesome introduction, and it's really kid friendly too. I also used to teach with Girls Who Code. I would use P5 for projects there too. But it's also, just because it's great for beginners doesn't mean it's specifically for kids. Tons of adults use it, tons of professionals use it all the time. So it's really, really adaptable. I think great for everyone.
Yeah, I really think it's the best way to teach beginner programming. Again, it's kind of wrapped up in all of this like web dev system where it's like a little bit clunky at first of like, oh, this is a JavaScript page and it's connecting to HTML. But like, as soon as you get set up and going, I find that it's an amazing way to teach the core concepts because it's so visual, it's so interactive. Back when I was in high school learning computer science, it was like, write an if statement and print out hello if it is true, and like, I'm sad if it's not true. And it's just like so much more fun to be able to do these like super interactive drawings. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know I TA'd a Python class when I was at graduate school at NYU, and it was like build a mortgage calculator, which I think is valuable for some people, but I was like, man, my first class was with Dan Schiffman learning P5, and like really, really happy about that.
Yeah.
Even if it's not something you end up using in your professional life, I think, it's still really fun and a great way to practice programming.
So the next session is starting at noon in 3 minutes. So we're cutting into your coffee time, guys. If you want to go take a break or something.
I just posted the links to the registration page for the 2 other sessions. We're doing Intro to Swift, which is the programming language that Apple uses to make apps. And then we are doing Learn CSS. So if this like web dev related stuff interests you, and you want to learn some web dev stuff in earnest of like making actual websites as opposed to little canvases, Learn CSS would be a good place to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can combine HTML, CSS with JavaScript. Last plug. P5 works with DOM manipulation and interactive stuff like that too. So you can combine all of this stuff together to make really awesome websites.
Yeah. So cool. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Kenny's going to be in that CSS lesson. Kenny is doing back-to-back sessions. He's doing 4.5 hours straight of teaching. So good job, Kenny.
No, I'm taking in 4.5 hours of audience participation. I'm just sitting here and looking pretty. That's all I'm doing.
That's what we hired you for, Kenny.
Exactly.
That's how you get the big bucks, guys.
All right, I'm gonna stop the stream if I can figure out how to do that. Thank you for joining, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care. Stay safe.
Talk to you later.
Bye.